welcome to my channel. Here we discuss all things educational. Thank you for tuning in. I am Lana, the educator. If you're a first-time listener on this channel, welcome and join me as I explore the latest educational trends, tackle pressing issues facing the education sector, and share stories of triumph and innovation from classrooms across the globe. If you're interested, then like and subscribe. If you're a student striving for success, a dedicated teacher shaping young minds, a paraprofessional making a difference, or an administrator leading the way, this channel is your place for inspiration, insights, and invaluable resources. Today on Teachers Have Issues, yes, I welcome my guest, Viveck Charran, chairman of Charran's Bookstore. Welcome, Viveck.
Thank you very much, Lana. I'm happy to be on your podcast.
I'm so pleased to have you, please. So can you, of course, people would want to know, tell us a little about yourself. I think people know Charran's Bookstore, but they don't know, the people behind Charran's Bookstore. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, Charran's Bookstore is really a family-owned company. It started with my grandparents, and then it moved. My dad ended up moving away. The original store was in Chaguanas in Felicity, then Chaguanas Main Road. Then my dad got married. He moved away. We started in Tunapuna, where I was actually born with my brother. My mom used to work in Nestle back in those days, and she just left her job to start the new business in Tunapuna, which was the new Charran's. And then my brother and I, we were educated abroad. We went to university, came back, and then we expanded to Trin City Mall and Sawa. And just recently, last year, we acquired a property in Diego Martin. So now we have Charran's Bookstore also in Diego Martin. As for myself, I'm chairman. My brother's now the CEO. My dad has since passed away. My mom is still in the business. She's much older now, so we'll like to say she's almost in semi-retirement, but she's there in the store in Tunapuna every day. And we're very happy to have her there. As for some of the things I do other than work, I'm also currently chairman of the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers. I used to be the president of the Samoa Business Organization for close to 10 years. I've also been a participant on the El Socorro South ECCE School Board. Currently, I am the manager of the Don Miguel Hindu School and the Aranguez Hindu School. And so, I feel as though, what was started so long ago with my grandparents and my parents and so on, I feel like, we are connected to education in a sense. We just don't feel that we're selling things just to make the money. We also feel that we're stakeholders in this, because long before the government started to, contribute and buy books for the schools and so on, so what was the textbook rental program? Parents had to buy everything for their kids and so on to go to school for many, many years. And so we felt that we were helping parents to outfit their kids to go to school. And then over the years, things changed. So at one point in time, we used to buy all our stuff from providers locally, from distributors, if you want to say that, people who would import stationery items and other things, and then bring it into the country and then sell to us and other bookstores. And after a while, we realized that prices kept creeping up. Like every year, the prices would raise and raise. And we thought that, that's not really our model. Our model is about affordable education. And we hear a lot about education not being affordable, but from our perspective, we find very hard to try and make it affordable. And so at that point in time, it was my dad, and he decided, listen, we need to go to the source. And the source where the majority of these goods were coming from at the time was China, right, which was one of the big or emerging manufacturing giants globally, and for stationery and other things. So they started going, he and my mom going to China. I started after that, and now we're in a situation where 10 years later, we've been going to China, and we're manufacturing a lot of things up there in terms of our own stationery and so on. And the reason for that is A, quality, and B, affordability. So we're trying to keep prices low, keep prices from being inflated. In a sense, we have cut out the middleman as much as we could cut out the middleman, and or the middle person. in order to bring the greatest value to our customers and so on. Because as far as we see it, we sell to everybody. We don't feel that we cater exclusively to any one income group or any one person. In our stores, we like to carry as wide a variety and as diverse a selection of products as possible. I mean, people tend to think we're just about, kids and primary school and secondary school, but the truth is many of our products, young people or people can use in the offices, people use in university going to school, people who are doing professional courses like ACC and stuff. We have things basically for everybody. And because the reality is that the original bookstore, is not it can't be a successful model anymore. And I'm sorry to say this, but we have actually seen over the years that less and less people are actually reading books or buying books to read. And I think we often see that reflected in how young kids do in SEA. And how kids going into Form 1 and some of the things that are said from the teachers and so on, when they meet children going into Form 1 about where their language ability is and where their writing ability is and so on. So, it's sad that things have come to that stage, but we still carry a wide range of books, available. But I feel like because technology is where it is, and most kids are now have smart devices, iPads or Samsung tabs or the smartphone, and they themselves find themselves on TikTok or YouTube and so on. I feel like we don't have the kind of reading, particularly with young people, that we should have. And even my own children, I see it sometimes in the way they pronounce words or they try to make sentences and so on. Because there's something that I feel comes with recognition when you read. Because I grew up reading, in my day, I used to read pretty much everything that we had in the store, from comic books to normal books, because we didn't have smart tablets back in those days. So I did a lot of reading myself growing up. And reading influences the way you speak. It influences the way you write. It influences the way, you pronounce things and so on. So, and that cannot really be substituted by, things like YouTube and TikTok and Facebook and so on. I believe that there's a place for those things educationally, a very important place, particularly YouTube, I believe. But I think there isn't much that could actually replace reading.
Yeah. So how you said it yourself that, things are evolving the way people read. How is the Charran's chain, the Charran's brand, tackling that? That people are no longer moving towards the traditional type of books.
Correct, but you cannot base I feel it's difficult to base a large business just on the sale of books alone. So what we found is that going to school requires much more than textbooks. Going to school requires all these additional stationery, accessories, uniform, even down to things like socks and handkerchiefs and wash rags and so on. And we have tried over the years to anticipate parents' needs and do what we call a one-stop shop, which is you come with your book list, you get assisted in having your books taken out for you. But you're also able to browse and shop to your leisure and to what your budgetary requirements are to pick up everything else you need for your kids. So it doesn't really require you having to go to 3 or 4 different stores and so on. And the funny thing is, like we started manufacturing even down to shoes, because one of the issues that we realized was a book list, or primary school book list at a lower level could come up to, let's say, $600 or around that, let's say. And then people would go out and say, well, I need a brand name shoe, and a brand name shoe is going to cost them upwards of $600 in Trinidad. So automatically your cost of going to school has increased by $600. So now you're paying $1,200. What happens if you have 2 kids, which is what most people tend to have? So we started manufacturing shoes that are school shoes, because in Trinidad, I agree with the system, which is a uniform system or having uniform, which is different from, let's say, American style system, means that the focus of the kids is really upon coming to school and social interactions and learning, right? It's not really about forming cliques. So it's not really about saying, well, I am different from you because I am wearing branded clothing, or I'm wearing things that are in style, or my shoes are Nike and you don't have Nike, or my shoes are the latest pair of Converse or Adidas and you don't have that because maybe you don't have the money to buy that, or maybe your parents don't have it. And so the good thing about uniform, our system with regard to that in Trinidad, and I think that's like you also find out in the UK and so on, and in some European schools, is that they tend to put less social pressure on the kids because there is less element of that difference that can be attributed to class or status or wealth when it comes to kids saying, well, I'll dress how I want to dress within the code, and then come with my brands, as opposed to kids who will not be able to come with their brand. So I think that's a good thing, and it's on that basis that we started manufacturing our own shoes under two labels to say that we try to make the cost of even the shoes more affordable to the parents, which is about half the price of a Nike and Adidas. And the fact is, it's not a Nike or Adidas, but do we really need a Nike or Adidas to go to school? And our analysis was, no, you don't, because if you're into sports, then you need to buy you can buy a shoe that is more suited for sports. If you're going out and you're hanging out and you want to wear something nice to go out with your parents, or to go to family events, or go to the cinema or whatever, then you can buy a shoe for that. But when it comes to school, what you really need is something comfortable, something that will last, and something that is, we would think affordable for parents and so on, to say, if I have 3 kids or 2 kids and growing kids, I can afford to buy the shoes as well as everything else that you need to go to school. So those are some of the things that we consider.
Okay. So I don't know if many people know that you have an online store. So can you tell us a bit about that? How did you transition from a traditional, physical store into the online store business?
Well, I mean, the online store business is because the age of let's say this generation of new parents is a generation that really grew up shopping online. And so when the craze for shopping online started to occur, like you had people buying all these things from Amazon and and whatever for their kids. But what we realized is that the younger generation seem less likely to want to come out and shop rather than stay at home and purchase things online for their kids. Now, there are pros and there are cons for that. I understand it's a difficult thing, perhaps, to find the time to come out, even though during the book season, which is, let's say, July into September, we open 7 days a week, as do most bookstores that do the same thing we do. That being said, there is the idea that parents are buying online. One of the issues with buying online, and I'm being honest, one of the issues with buying online is that currently the way that buying online is structured is that there are a lot of charges that are leveled upon the online business with regard to processing financial transactions. So, for example, in addition to the normal charges the bank lays on using a credit card or a debit card, we have additional charges that are levied upon us and many other people who are operating online that have to facilitate these online charges. And so it costs a lot more per transaction. So what that means is that below a certain value of transaction is no longer financially viable for the online entity or the online business, such as myself. Which is why, for example, if you go in churches or you go in KFC, or you go in other places that have online businesses, there's what is called a minimum order. So you can't buy the cheapest thing, like, for example, just fries alone and have it delivered or something like that, because it doesn't, the system won't allow you to, because of the transactional charge associated with that is actually more than the value of the good, which is something I feel that needs to be fixed. So with regard to the business chambers and so on, I feel that is something that we need to go and discuss with the banks because, we keep saying online, online stores and buying online is the future. But the reality is that buying online is costing a lot more for the consumer than not buying online. And so sometimes I don't always feel that that's the best deal because in addition to purchasing your good, you also have to sometimes pay for delivery, and you also have to do these other things. Now with Charran's, we are launching our website called mycharrans.com because we're doing a whole new experience. So there's already charrans.com, but that's a separate company. But our particular new website, which is called mycharrans.com, it's been in development for some time now, and we're looking to roll that out maybe mid-July or the end of July. We are hoping for earlier, but we had some teething issues and so on. But we're hoping that for that to be more, one of the largest and widest online bookshops, if you want to put it that way, in terms of all the items and the variety of items that will be stocked. And it's also going to be more fluid in terms of, to survive at Charran's, we've had to make changes, meaning that we can't be selling just books and stationery and school-related items throughout the year. In order to survive, we also turn somewhat into a department store / home store.
What distinguishes Charran's bookstore, mycharrans.com?
mycharrans.com, yeah.
How is that different from the Charran's online bookstore that we...
Well, we're hoping that how it's going to evolve, what it's going to evolve to is it's going to evolve to a situation where we have a much larger variety of products. I think it's more than just books we're going to sell, and the store itself is going to evolve into many other dimensions or many other types of retail other than just, let's say, books and stationery and so on.
Right.
So we're hoping, almost you could say an Amazon type experience where you go there and you have a large variety of goods and services, goods available. We're hoping that it would be like that. We're also working for certain processes, and that's what's taking time, whereby, it's going to be easier to fill your book list and get the things that you need, at the click of a button, so to speak. So, but like I said, technology is not often as fast as we want it to be. I think in the developmental stage, sometimes you hit like, little setbacks, but the reality is that you have to keep pushing towards your goal. And if your goal is to have the easiest interface possible, or if your goal is to bring something new to the market, then you have to keep your eyes on the prize, as they say, and keep working towards that. And that's what we're doing with mycharrans.com.
Excellent. On the online store, is it you guys are doing delivery as well?
Yes, we're doing delivery, but what's also different is that when it launches, it allows for people to do pickup. So you can actually buy your stuff, and then you can pick up at one of our 4 branches, which would be Twin City Mall, Tunapuna, Samoa, and Diego Martin. So you can decide, what areas is more convenient for you, and you can purchase your goods and say, I want to pick up, in which case you won't have to pay for delivery and so on, which is easy. But that being said, people tend to say that you're old-fashioned and that sort of thing. To be honest with you, the safest thing to do when it comes to uniform and shoes and underwear and socks and those type of things is to actually come into the branches and to do your own shopping, because the way the branches are laid out, particularly like Diego Martin, our newest branch, we believe Diego Martin is the largest bookstore / stationery store in Trinidad. And the way we've laid it out is almost like a supermarket or Pennywise and so on, where you're able to browse and select the items that you want. And to be honest with you, you will not really be able to enjoy the diversity of different items we have unless you actually come into the branches and browse yourself. And I feel that because you see, again, what is the goal here? The goal here is not just for us to say we're selling you stuff. The goal here is for the parent or the student or the individual who is purchasing these items to make the best informed choice, to make a choice based on the things that you like or your child likes, or to make a choice to say, I am selecting these items to get the best value of the best value of items that I can choose for my child based on A, the price, and B, the quality, and C, just personal choice. And so coming in allows you to browse at leisure and you know, see all these things and make your choices. Because to be honest with you, Lana, when we prepare for a book, what we call the book season, our preparations start from January. So 6 months before we're preparing. 6 months before we're thinking about what we're buying, we're doing inventory, we're looking at what the parents like, what the parents didn't like. As a matter of fact, I have kids, my brother has kids, right? Our kids don't use anything outside of our stores. I don't buy Nike shoes or whatever for my kids to go to school with. They have Nike shoes, yes, but not to go to school with. And the reason for that is if it's good enough for other people's kids, then it has to be good for my own kids.
Bravo.
And so my own kids, in a sense, are the test of our own products.
Nice.
So when it comes to even the most basic stuff for us, I fill my kids' school bags with those same items. I don't buy anything else for them. I don't buy things from Amazon. I don't buy super branded items or anything like that. I buy the same things that I would like to sell to the parents and for the children.
I'm glad to
Students and
hear
so
a lot of what you're saying, that you practice what you preach. You don't go elsewhere to get stuff. Your own products are good enough. And I think that is very good for listeners and consumers to hear. I like that you also adapt to the changing technological advancements, innovations, and just adapting to what your consumers need. So I was listening to you. I didn't know about the Diego Martin store, so I think it piqued my interest. Where exactly in Diego Martin is it located?
It's on Diego Martin Main Road, so it's actually opposite the new. It's just off Four Corners, but it's actually opposite the new gas station and almost next door to Domino's Pizza.
Okay.
So it's very well located.
Yeah, let me ask you, what for you has been the most rewarding aspect of leading a business like this? What has been rewarding for you?
People, I mean, I just love the interaction with parents. And, even with my parents, there was always a sense of, I don't know if pride is the correct word, but there's a sense of joy, right? Being able to go through the season and being able to have things that people like and buy to use for their kids to go to school. And when and sometimes, like, I would see people talk to my dad and mom back in the day and saying, I remember you used to come in here with my parents, like in our oldest stores, which is like Tuna Puna. I used to come here with my parents to buy my goods and so on. And now a generation later, I'm doing the same thing. And that says a lot about what we set out to do, and that is why we take it seriously. I mean, we don't always get right, and that's the truth. We don't always get right. Sometimes we buy products, the parents don't like it. Sometimes we buy products, what we buy isn't what we were supplied. It's not it isn't the kind of quality that we want, and we wouldn't have known that until parents said something about it or complained about it. Sometimes we have lapses in what we would call the customer service and so on, which we're not always happy about. So we kind of install cameras and audio cameras in all the stores. So when people complain, we're able to investigate what was the incident or, what happened. So we don't always get it right, Lana, and that's the truth. But we want to get it right. And we want to get it right because we really, really are grateful and thankful that from one generation to the next, people still come into the stores. And we are also very happy to see our stores full with parents shopping for their kids because, you see, what this means is that, like I'm going out on a limb here because what has been of concern is that I feel that people have actually been investing less in their children's education. And the idea for that may have come from the fact that people keep saying, well, books are so expensive and I can't afford it and I can't do, I can't do all these things. And then the government says, well, okay, we're going to start to buy books and you're going to have the books in the school. And then people still saying, well, it's onerous and it's difficult and I don't know why I'm doing it. But the reality is investing in your child's education has always been, in the old days, has been a very important thing. And when you look at the fact that many of the people who have attained some of the highest offices in Trinidad and Tobago, when you're looking at a prime minister, male prime minister, female prime minister, or you're looking at somebody, or ministers, you're looking at somebody who has become attorney general. You're looking at doctors, you're looking at lawyers, you're looking at surgeons, you're looking at very successful professional people. When you hear their stories are often very humble stories.
Yes.
You're listening to people whose parents themselves were illiterate. They didn't have the opportunity, the ability to go to school. But what did those parents do? Those parents invested in their kids' education at a time when you had to buy everything for your kids' education. The government wasn't helping at that stage, right? So however you had to do that, it meant that it was a sacrifice the household made to send their kids to school. And the kids understood what that sacrifice was. And they worked hard. And then they succeeded. And when they succeeded, their entire family, in a sense, one would think, may have succeeded as well, too. And that has always been in our country and in our society. I would think, a very good value, as it were, because when our kids back in the day went to university abroad, it was often said that, they performed very well, that when they went there, the level of education they had was a very high level of education, and they did quite well in many of the places, which is also a testament to teaching and the teachers here as well, too, in the school. So when parents reach a stage where they're saying, I'm frustrated and I'm fed up and I don't feel that, I want to spend this money on the kids because, what does it mean? And where my kids can't get a job and where they're going and so on. They sort of have to bear the cost because it is better for your child to be educated than not be educated, no matter what happens. Because recently, being the head of the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers, we were in a lot of symposiums with crime and so on. And one of the things that we were discussing with some of the economists from UWI was labor participation rate, which means less people are participating in the labor force, as it were, right? Or the labor force isn't really increasing. And when you look at, and there was I think there was a Ministry of Education study that happened in 2022, I believe it was. And they were talking about, one of the things they were talking about was school dropout rate. And I got my hands and I was looking at it because it's available online.
Yes.
And when you look at the sweet spot for dropouts is 14 to 16. That's scary because you're looking at young men and young women, and predominantly the study said it was young men. And when you look at the areas this was happening in Northeastern Division, whatever, and you correlate that with where crime levels higher or highest, then you find that there's a connection. Maybe some people might say it's a tenuous connection, but a connection nonetheless that, bears some looking at. So one, why are kids dropping out of school? Is it the cost? I have to say, Lana, that it can't be the cost. Do you know why, Lana? Because book season hasn't even begun yet. And we are inundated every single year. We are inundated with charities and businesses that purchase vouchers and come here and purchase books and supplies for, I would say hundreds and hundreds of parents and students. So I'm talking about temples, I'm talking about churches, I'm talking about mosques, right? I'm talking about individuals that take it upon themselves, a groups of individuals, what I would say NGOs, that go and they help people. I'm talking about Living Waters as well, too. I'm talking about the Pure Foundation. I'm even talking about regional corporations that if they have some cash or they have some money, they end up helping people in their communities. I'm talking about schools that also find parents sometimes. The parents offer the service that let them know which kids are economically challenged and so on, and they will contribute and they will buy. So on one side, we have the government saying, well, we're buying all the books for the kids and so on. And the cost of education is free, on secondary level, and once it's a public or denominational school, as it were. And then we have all these private entities and religious entities also contributing huge amounts, I feel, to charities with getting kids into the school. So if you tell me and say that, in a really bad state and I really can't afford sending my kids to school and so on, I would have to say that help is available.
Yes.
You just have to reach out, and you're going to find the ability to do that. We ourselves as a business, we help a lot of people too. And we fill out a book list every year and so on. Once we can verify that that's the case. Many people call us, and sometimes the school calls us. And when the school calls us and verifies that there's a legitimate case, we also help in that regard. We also help with a lot of orphanages and children's homes and so on when they need stuff. And so, I don't want people to think that you're alone out there.
Yeah.
And that there's no help for you and that you have to lean on the government alone. That's not true. There is a lot of charities and people and businesses that are actually helping kids to go to school.
You know what? I have the question to ask you. What issues you think teachers have? Let's start with that. What issues you think teachers have from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, I have a different perspective because I've worked in the system working with teachers. I'm also a parent, but I'm also, in the case of helping to manage those two primary schools, Masaba schools as they are, and also having worked on the board in an ECC school and so on. The reality is, I think teachers get a lot of bad rap. They get blamed for a lot of things. And what I have to say is that many of the teachers I have dealt with, I think that they want the best for their students. I really honestly do. I know how important it is for them and how they feel about their class doing well, particularly in this primary school, let's say SE exams. And I know the concern they have sometimes with the kids that aren't performing that well as well too. But in any profession, you're going to have people that exemplify the best in the profession, right? Or represent the best values that the profession has. And then you're going to have people that don't do that. And as with everything else, those people that don't exemplify the best in the profession, or they are the ones that set the example, even if they're a handful, unfortunately, the entire profession is painted in a very broad brush. So it's very easy for parents and other people to say, teachers are the problem, teachers are the problem. I don't believe that teachers are the problem. I believe that sometimes, and this might not be a popular thing to say, is that teachers have to be too many things. A teacher these days in certain schools, in certain areas, and I don't mean that about, have to be much more than just a teacher. A teacher is really supposed to come in there and manage the class and teach, and they're teaching from a curriculum as well too, and the kids are learning and so on, and that's really what they're supposed to be concerned about, other than the well-being of the kids. The fact that I'm building a relationship with the kids throughout the year, the academic year, is really about saying, well, okay, you know what? Let's see how much, with regard to the subject I'm teaching, how much the curriculum these kids can absorb and where they are, and from year to year based on the exam results and from term to term based on the exam results. What you find happening is that teachers have to be parent figures, they have to be therapists, they have to be so much more than that. And I think in our society and the culture that's starting to appear in our society, that sort of gangster culture, as it is a very disrespectful culture, and it's also a very violent culture. And we're seeing those values being reflected in our youth, and it's not a good thing. I think sometimes the parents could stop it, but the reality is teachers tend to spend more time with the kids than sometimes the parents actually do at certain times in their life. Right? And when you look at that, one of the things that teachers actually have to face now is the threat of violence. And we see it a lot. We see it on social media when it goes viral, all the fighting that happens outside school, all the fighting that happens in school.
Yes.
And I think now is a very different time from, even let's say a couple of years ago. Now is a very different time because now we're seeing, a lot more, outbreaks of violence in the classroom. And sometimes violence is actually directed at teacher. And I feel that is in no way something that teachers should ever have to be comfortable with. And I feel it's something that should be, it's not a great environment for teachers to be working.
Yes.
The other side of that is how do teachers deal with the fact that parents don't believe for parents that don't believe in the education system. So for a parent that says, I am unwilling to invest in my child's education, in not just in a material way, but also in a way as a mentor, even if I don't understand exactly what is being taught to my child, to make sure my child does the homework. Are you doing your homework? You're getting up to go to school. You have anything to hand up to your teacher? You know, management of the child as a student going to school. That has to happen at home as well.
Yes.
If the parent doesn't want to accept that responsibility for whatever reason, then what you find happening is that that child is going to school without that management happening at home at a very young age where they don't have the emotional intelligence to do it themselves or the self-motivation to do it themselves. And they're always going to end up getting in trouble with the teacher because they never have the assignments on time and whatever. Now, sometimes the teacher might realize, well, you know, this is a good kid. This is a good kid, but this kid, you know, is having some issues and so on, so I'll find a way to deal with that. But many times the kid will also, when the teacher says, well, why are these things not being done, or why are you tardy, or why are you whatever, the teacher is met with hostility. And then when that hostility, when that relationship starts on a hostile basis, you know, it could grow into something else that is not good for the child and is also not a great environment in the classroom or for the teacher.
Yes.
So I don't believe teachers should be blamed for everything. I believe that really and truly, you know, a lot of the issues that happen in the classroom, we have to ask ourselves as parents ourselves, right? What are we doing to help that? Because it can't only be the school's fault or the teacher's fault. It has to be what is happening in my home. And I understand that people have a lot of challenges in them. You know, sometimes there isn't always the whole nuclear family kind of thing, mom and dad and that sort of thing. Many times they're single parent families. It happens across the board. It happens at all income levels and whatever, right? So it's not to say that a single parent family is something that only happens at you know, a particular level of society. It happens across the board. The reality is that how the parent deals with that at home is reflected in how the child comes to school. And how does the parent try to provide a safe learning environment for the kid at home? Now, some kids I think are prodigies, right? So I know a couple of parents, and I always tell them, I said, boy, you're so lucky. You know, your kid is self-motivated, studying on his or her own, doing so well, and the child wants to do well. But that's not, you know, that's not you know, that doesn't happen all the time.
No.
And so a lot of the children really need that guidance through that period of their life to get the right habits and so on, because it doesn't get any easier. And sometimes, like, I find like I am not anti-SE. I know a lot of parents are anti-SEA, secondary assessment, that exam, right? Common entrance or whatever it was before.
Yes.
I am not that, because my thing is, after 5 years, even if you get rid of the SES thing, what has your child really learned? They must have a benchmark to say, your child is at a certain level, your child is able to do these things, basic things, because it's not exceedingly difficult things, right? And like, for example, comprehension, being able to read a passage, answer questions based on that, being able to have some sort of understanding of what are the metaphors and what is the descriptive language in a poem and what does that mean. Being able to write something like a report or an essay. Now, if it is after 5 years of education, you find that the majority of them are not being able to do that well, then what is the problem? Now, most often, the first thing is the teacher is the problem. The teacher is the problem, the teacher is the problem. The exam is too hard, so let's blame the exam, let's blame the teacher. But again, there's one classroom in school, I believe, and there's another classroom at home. So when I say things like, when we had started the conversation, I was talking about reading. And I was saying how fundamental reading is to learning. And that's not just about me selling books. That is just I see that because my kids don't read as much either. And I keep trying to get them to read, but I mean, the pull of the iPad and the smartphone is greater than sitting down with a book, right? Because a book is so boring compared to you constantly flicking through all these different videos and whatever. But, you know, when you look at certain fundamental things that should be done at home and stuff like that to help learning in school, it's not easy to do that. And I feel like, you know, I feel like that where we are as a society, that's what we kind of transitioning through. We transitioning through, you know, our kids, you know, being in daily contact with technology and social media and so on, and all its various forms, unlike how we were when we were growing up. And how does that translate to what they're learning in school? Is that always the best thing for them? And I don't think it's always the best thing. I think it's a good thing, and I think it's something that could be very helpful at certain stages, right? But I don't always believe that it's the it's a good thing. But again, you know, when we talk about so all right, so the violence is one thing that I don't like that teachers have to face that.
Yeah.
The second thing is the you know, the idea that how many different roles a teacher must have. And sometimes that in itself is quite onerous for a person to take on, because when you look at any other type of job other than a teacher, does anybody in any other type of job have to take on all these different kinds of roles? And the answer to that question is no. A boss sometimes is a boss, and a boss could just be a mean boss and say, listen, I just about your performance review, and I'm not about anything else. A teacher can't do that, right? Sometimes to get the best out of the kid, the teacher has to do more than that, right? And has to fulfill many other different types of roles. The second thing is, I feel that we are heading to a system where the onus is on the cheapest level, providing the cheapest level of education possible. And I understand where that is coming from. That is coming from the fact that parents are saying, it is too expensive to send my child to school, and I can't afford to send my child to school and whatever. But what I'm saying is that the cheapest inputs into anything, right? The cheapest inputs into manufacturing something, the cheapest inputs into growing something, the cheapest inputs into anything is not always going to give you the best results. One. Two, there's a difference between cheapest and quality. And sometimes if you want to you have to get it right. Sometimes you have to sacrifice and say, listen, I can't allow this to go below a certain level, because then I will sacrifice quality. I'll sacrifice the quality of the inputs I'm putting into this education system. And if the economy is challenged, and if the government perhaps may be challenged at times to say, well, where am I finding the money to do all these things? And you know, how should we, you know, let's look for a cheaper way to do this thing, then there is going to have an impact on the system. Like I look at, like, the schools I manage, they will send me the essay results, and they will send me, and so I will look at, you know, with regard to creative writing and so on, where, you know, what the marks are and so on. It's interesting to look at it because it gives you a broader perspective of, you know, where the kids are, because creative writing isn't really a mathematical computation. Creative writing is really communication, right? It's about communicating how you feel, or a story that you create in your head, how you utilize language, how you utilize words, spelling, grammar. That is something you will take, you know, for the rest of your life.
Yes.
And so I have 17-year-old and 18-year-olds that come and apply for jobs in Charran's, right? All the 4 branches. Every summer we take kids in. And we're happy to do so, and they come with their kids. Last year when we put it out, we had like 1,000 applications. We had to close it down.
Wow.
Because so many parents want their kids to come out and work. And the sad thing is, I have 15-year-olds coming in here with their parents and so on, and the moms are begging to take the kid and whatever, but the laws don't allow me to, so I can't do that. But I feel like that's something we should, you know, we should allow, in a sense, that if your kid is coming and working a safe, learning something, learning a skill, learning to deal with authority, learning, you know, learning to work, and is able to pay and be able to pay them a stipend or something like that, or even a proper salary, which I have no problem with. I feel it's something we should allow, because then when these 14 or 16-year-olds, when they drop out of school, legally they can't work anywhere.
Yeah.
So what are they doing until they reach, you know, until they reach 16 or 17? What are they going to do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're making such a good point, because I'm smiling because my first job was in a bookstore right there in San Juan as well. And you just learn how to operate in the workplace. So many valuable and significant things you're saying. You know, it's important to learn how to manage your money, your time management, interpersonal relations, and that sort of thing. So you're making a very significant point here. And I do appreciate that. I think for a lot of us coming out of sixth form or, being 18-year-olds, bookstores were some of the first places we went to see if we can get a job. And I really appreciate that. And I'm happy to hear it's still going on, that, people are still coming to stores like Charran's to get their jobs there.
No, for sure. And we're very happy to have them. I have to say that, it shows because it's about, it's about life lessons in a sense. So sometimes, I wouldn't say that the smartest, I don't want to use the word smart, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
Right, they will come in here, but they will do so well.
Yeah, they have other skills. It might not be the academic skills, but they really
and then
have
I could
other
look at
skills.
that person after so many years. I could look at that person. Sometimes I tell them, right? And I said, you could reach very far, because you could find yourself in a much larger organization than Charran's. And because of your personality and the way you work and so on, you could just climb that ladder until you reach the highest possible level. And you can do well.
People never forget you guys, I was in your store in San Juan, and the clerk, well, one thing too, I was to point out and notice to you, however old I am, and I'm still seeing some of the Charran's employees there. And I always say that to me is a place that you would want to work because the employees have decided to stay for years, employed there, and they seem very happy. You don't go into the store and you get grumpy customer service when you go to Charran's. It's very welcoming. One of your employees I was talking to recently, and she was saying, a boy, he's telling me, come forward in the line in his own establishment, she was saying to me. And she said she didn't know who he was, and when she got up to him, he said, you don't remember me, I used to work at Charran's. That was my first job. And she said she was standing in this line not knowing when she was going to get through there, and he remembered her from all those years ago. So, I think it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have somebody from Charran's here, because you guys are so much involved in your community. I didn't know how much when you started to tell me about the schools and so forth, but I know one of the first things people say around this time, where you're going to Charran's bookstore, because that's the place you're going to get everything that you need,
Right, but let me tell you a secret. So at the end of the book season, all the temps, all the young people, we say, in addition to their salaries and so on, right, we give them $300 or $400 vouchers where they could take items to go back to school or wherever they're going, whether they're going to university or wherever. But I'm happy to say that many of the kids that have worked here, they come back to me, or they come back to us, and they ask for recommendations later on in life, which we're very happy to give and happy to vouch for them once they've done well with us, right? And they moved on to such good places, right?
Yes.
I have people who have moved on to really good jobs. Some of them work in the bank, some of them work in different places, and I'm very happy to see that. But again, when they're so young and they come here to work at 17, let's say, right? And you can see sometimes they like that, but it isn't always smooth. Sometimes we have difficulties. And when we have difficulties, the way we handle it, or I handle it as a boss, isn't always to say, well, listen, you need to go. You need to go. You ain't working out, you need to go.
Yeah.
I call them in, we talk to them. Sometimes we call the parent in and we let the parent know, because after all, even though they're 17 and they think they're big, dealing with kids.
Yeah.
So we call the parent, talk to the parent, say, you know what, we having an issue here. What do you think about this? This is what we want to see. This is what we need him to do or her to do. Can they do it? Can you support them in doing it? And sometimes it works out. And then that same child or 17-year-old that was having a difficult time at the start, 2 months later, they're a completely different person. And that's a good thing to see as well. And it's a good experience to have at a young age rather than going out at 20-something and then having to fight your way in a working environment and then go through that same thing all over again, but a much older level. Because the reality about a working environment is this: the older you are, the more mature you are, it is the more that is expected of you. So you cannot go out at 21 and 22 and then you have, let's say, a very low level of emotional maturity, or you're not very self-motivated, or you don't have an idea of how to deal with authority or communicate with authority or work as a team or among other people and so on, right? And many kids, when they first start, they're not used to that, particularly the boys, right? And they have issues because somebody talked to them what they would consider too rough, or they ask them to do something in a particular tone of voice and they don't like it. Small little hiccups like that. But again, it is a transitional point. So if they make it through the transitional point to understand that you're working in a high pressure environment, that you're part of a chain, that you're part of a team, and that we need to rely upon you, which is what I tell them. I said, when you come here to work as kids, you're not in school anymore, I need to rely upon you, and you're a very important part in terms of what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, so I expect more from you guys, right? So things that happen, sometimes they make it through and they make it through well. And I think, that's the way it should be. I feel more young people need to come out and work at a younger age.
Yeah.
And get that experience, so they have that instead of waiting to say, listen, I'm going to start my first working experience when I finish university. There's so much that you can learn between now and then, and maybe that could translate to school as well too. Who knows?
For sure. Vivek, I wanted to ask you, I think I had this in mind to ask you at the beginning, because you started to talk and I was so interested in what you were saying. But and you're so passionate about what I'm hearing is not just about bookstores. You said, I'm hearing your engagement with your community, your interest in education and literacy, and that's very heartwarming to hear as well. So did you always want to go into the family business here? Charran's being a legacy store. When I sat down and I thought about it, I said, but wow, Charran's been around a long time. It's a legacy store.
Well, actually, no, the secret is my parents really wanted me to be a lawyer. So when I went abroad, I did A-levels here, then I went abroad. I studied at the University of Kent in England, and I did law and history. And then, I started doing the bar up in England, but at that time, the bar had changed. So it was no longer, before there was one bar for everyone, both UK citizens and foreigners, and then you go to the Inns of Court and so on. By the time I was ready, they had changed it. So there was a different bar school for foreigners and a different bar school for members of for citizens and so on. So it was a bit different. At that point in time, I didn't think that I wanted to be a lawyer. Having gotten into it and started, the formal training aspect of it. And I spoke to my parents and so on, and they were like, okay, no problem. And but if you come back, you have to come back and work, right? And I was like, all right, I'm prepared to do that. And so when we came back, we expanded at that point in time, and there were other stores and so on. And so I had to run a particular store, manage and run a particular store, and it wasn't an easy experience in the first couple of years because I think they were pretty hard on me.
All right.
And it was very controlled, kind of, I had to be accountable for every single thing. But it was good. It was a good experience because it helped build me. And then also, even though I have a degree, and I went to Arthur Lockjack down here, so I did my MBA as well. So even though I had all of that, I worked at all levels in the business. So when it came to the warehouse and we got containers, I would be there with the guys and we would offload.
Right.
And so I didn't come into the business and I sat behind a desk and I was the boss of everything and everybody immediately. Right? So I worked at all different levels, and that's good because it creates a certain level of humility, one. And two, it's good too because you see the perspective of the person working that job or working at that level when you have to do it yourself.
Yes.
So many years later now, so sometimes my kids will tell me, they say, Dad, you sit behind your desk all day, and what do you do at work and so on. And I say, but I paid my dues over the years to get to where I am now.
Yes.
And they can't understand that because they're still so young. But that is really what happened.
They're seeing the fruits of the labor.
Right, because even when we were studying abroad, when we came back home, we had to work for book season. So we go in the store, we weren't paid a salary. First couple of years I started working when I came back from university. I didn't get a salary as well too. That was supposed to be my payback for them sending me to university, but it all worked out good in the end.
Yeah. I'm just going to ask our last question, and I think it came out, but I want to hear how you will frame it, because I'm looking at Charran's as a legacy thing. I'm listening to you talk about your family, and the business, but do you think your family values and principles have really guided your decision making and operations for this business? Your family
Yes,
values.
definitely, definitely. I think you can't discount uh what it is being a parent and the actions of a parent, because everything that you do, both good and bad, will eventually be mirrored in your kids. They will not think so. When I was much younger and thing, I would say, I don't like what my father's doing. I don't like what I don't want to do that. I would do it differently. And then over the years, you see yourself, you understand things you didn't understand then. You understand why they were doing it now, but you didn't understand why they were doing it then. But we have a sense of charity in our family, and we have a sense of generosity in our family. And I have to say that that came from my parents and my grandparents, and that sense of charity and generosity was really because they were very religious people. So it came from a spiritual background, sort of thing. So like I grew up in Tunapuna. Back in the day on Saturdays, my mom would have like all the homeless people behind the store and be feeding them and stuff, and I'd be sitting on the step watching those things. And so me getting involved in things outside of channels, like getting involved in school boards and finding myself on chambers and stuff like that started because I saw my parents also doing that and finding themselves, in different levels of service at times in their life. And I did it naturally. It didn't really prompt me to do it, but I also feel that maybe, I ended up there because of how they were and what their influence was in a sense. So even now as a parent, I always have to be mindful of what I do and what my actions are, because the fact is that obviously my kids are taking note even when I don't think they're taking note, or maybe there's some kind of subliminal or subconscious programming that goes on when they're looking at you as a parent doing what you're doing. And when we take that, right, when you take that idea or that concept and you apply it across the board to all parents in our country, then that's also a very good thing, and it's also a very bad thing. You understand? And so that's why ultimately as a parent, we really have to have a certain amount of responsibility, not just, for the things that we do, but for how we go, what we are creating in our children for the next generation, right?
Thank you so much, Viveck, for this has been an enjoyable and informative interview here. Thank you so much again for your generosity in coming as a guest on to Teach Us Have Issues. Yes.
No, not at all. Thank you so much for reaching out. I'm very happy that you did. It was, for me too, it was an enjoyable experience. Very happy to be on with your podcast. I wish you the best with your podcast.